So let's kick this off. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to, I guess, our March ACG event. This is, it's been a fun kind of year, let's say, being able to do a lot of these, not having to travel to the Ritz-Carlton, but we definitely missed the interaction with all of you. Hopefully we'll be able to get to back to that interaction this summer. We wouldn't be able to do these even by Zoom without all of our annual sponsors. So thank you very much for all of you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the platinum sponsors first, who includes BDO, Bernstein, Cressa, Greenberg Traurig, Lockton, Prospecta, TD Bank. Our gold sponsors are Altamira Corporation, and that's our moderator today, Craig Reed, Bank of America, Cordia Partners, Grant Thornton and Holland & Knight, and NFP. I'm Tim Myers from Baker Tilly, and I'm the president for this year, and our next year's president is Craig Reed, and he will be doing our moderating today. Craig, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, that's great. Again, thank everybody for being here. I asked Nicole to throw up a quick slide. We took a quick poll amongst our panelists today and decided that we could either read about all of the transactions they were involved in this past year, or we could do a panel. And it was clear by the time we started to look at all the deals these guys have been involved in that we would never have gotten through describing each one. And so here's a quick snapshot of just for you to take away some of the deal activity that our panelists have been involved in since the beginning of 2020. So with us today, we've got our own Michael Lustbader, managing partner at Arlington Capital. I see Michael as the role model for the government contracting roll-up, and everybody has tried to emulate his style and successes that he's had early on, and just really been a great partner to us on the board at ACG, and just really exciting contributor to our deal flow in this market. Second is Kirk Konert, partner at AE Industrial Partners. I think Kirk this year has been the busiest man in show business. I mean, he's really been involved in just a tremendous number of new platform creations, combinations of platforms into new platforms, add-on acquisitions, and some structured solutions. Just some really exciting deal flow. Making our strategics or our corporate representatives today looking like slouches in their own right. We've got Dave West from ECS. Again, and many of you know Dave from both his ECS capacity, but his time at Blue Delta and his other roles, also very active here in the community over the years. And then Randy Phillips, last but not least, Randy Phillips, the senior VP at Leidos, who's done some of the biggest deals in our industry over the last year. And I'm just honestly thrilled to have this whole panel together, and I'm looking forward to a great and fun conversation today. So without further ado, let's kick it off. So I'll kick it off by just saying about a year ago, we were all just beginning to head into the lockdown, right? I mean, this was, for me, this was maybe the first week of lockdown. Who knew what we were getting ourselves into, right? And so I want to, for each of the panelists, I want to ask you, what was going through your heads this time last year regarding your expectations for being able to get deals done in 2020? Let's go in order for this first one here, Michael.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the panel. I think in Dave and Randy's defense, just on those number of deals, it's a lot easier at a private equity firm where we have, I've got 4 other partners who are doing a number of those deals. So we had 5 deal teams. So if you divide that by 5, that's more comparable to what Randy and Dave were able to do with kind of their centralized one deal team structure in their defense. But to be honest, what I was thinking at this point had nothing to do with deals whatsoever. It really was, safety and kind of, security of my family, and just trying to figure out kind of which way was up and figure out how to stay safe in the world. Like I'm sure all the panelists, we had a number of things that were midstream. But I think like everybody listening on the phone, that was a secondary concern, just trying to figure out what was the scope of the virus, how are we going to be able to kind of manage through. And so, wasn't thinking about that, wasn't thinking about the pending election or anything, really just trying to focus on what do we need to do to be able to stay safe and secure. The second thought was, okay, how about these deals that are mid-flight? What do we need to do on them? And so kind of the kind of thought process on that was, this is really a time to shine, as a good buyer in the space and trying to figure out ways to be creative. And so, we looked at what opportunities we had already met with the management teams and had already done site visits. What were the ones that were kind of earlier on and we haven't had that opportunity to do, and we kind of bifurcated because we had different solutions for each of them. And the ones that we were further enough along, we really said, okay, we had just raised in 2019 a much larger fund, a $1.7 billion fund, and we said, okay, now's the time for us to really use that capital to our advantage. The debt markets went kind of in a bad spot, and so we kind of said, okay, for the things we really want, we're going to have to be able to be prepared to do all equity, and that may be larger than what some of our fund concentration limits would be, but we figured, okay, we'll get permission from our LPs to be able to do that. We were confident that we'll be able to ultimately get financing done. So we kind of really, it provided a lot of clarity. What are the deals that are important? Where do we want to focus our time? And how do we want to kind of execute to get them done?
Great, thanks. Kirk, how about you?
Yeah, similar to Michael, right after I got my 48th roll of toilet paper, then it was,
that was a strategic acquisition.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't dissimilar to hurricanes down here, but it was. Is this what does this virus look like? Right? Is this a zombie movie? Right? Are we locked down for a long time? What's going to happen to our companies? Let's make sure they're doing everything they can to make sure their employees are safe and healthy. Let's make sure they have significant liquidity to get through whatever is going to happen. So it's really batten down the hatches. Let's make sure that we are in a position of strength to get through this. After that, it was similar to Michael, right? We had deals that were midstream, right, where we had to figure out what does this mean for our current deals? What does this mean for the near term, short, long term? And I think we had a similar view, right, where we especially in our sector didn't think that there was a big impact overall to the long term viability for great companies, right? So let's figure out how to get the deals done that we've committed to, show the seller community that we're committed to getting these done. And same as Michael, where like the financing markets just shut off, right? So we said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to try to find debt in this market. It's going to come back, and if so let's over equitize every deal, all equity, and worst case scenario, maybe we're refinancing in a year from now. Thankfully, that played out a little bit better than we expected, but it was obviously a risk. But we were at the end of the day, we wanted to use the next during this period to show that we're committed to this industry, committed to the great companies that we're backing, and get deals done. And I think that but if you had to talk, if you were speaking to me last year at this time, I would have said there was no way we're getting this many deals done, right? We might get the deals done that were midstream, but I don't expect there's going to be a lot of activity. That obviously played out much differently, where this was the busiest and most active year for us ever. So I think we're in hindsight, there were, and we'll get to it later in the panel, and there was some positives that came out of this experience from a deal making perspective.
That's great. Thanks. Dave?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me join this panel this morning. Similarly to Michael and Kirk, I think we obviously triaging at the beginning, right? This exogenous shock. It was a bit of a horror movie for me. 15 years ago, I had been hired into the early stage of DHS, and I was actually helping with some pandemic planning in London with our British allies. And obviously 15 years later, it hit us a lot harder than probably a lot expected. But we quickly looked at kind of protecting the business, looking at our balance sheet, making sure we were in a good position there. For those who don't know ASGN all that well, we're about $4 billion revenue IT services business, $3 billion of which or so is focused in the commercial realm, and about $1 billion of that is the ECS segment, where I focus most of my time. But I support the strategic planning efforts of the parent. And so we knew we had various impacts across the business, but once we kind of got a handle on what we thought those impacts were going to be, we're known, our DNA is as a growth company, and our balance sheet was strong. Our cash position was excellent. And I think our strategy pretty quickly revealed itself that we're going to continue on. We're aggressively pushing into digital transformation and higher end IT services. And so I think our thought was the earlier we can move to be aggressive to accelerate that will be advantageous for us to do so. So we wanted to quickly look at opportunities to use the cash that we had and kind of the clear strategy to try to take advantage of that.
That's great. And Randy, how about from Leidos' perspective?
Yeah, we about 12 months and a day ago, I guess, we were feeling pretty good. We were trading at an all-time high at $120 a share. We had just closed our acquisition of Dynetics for just under $1.7 billion. And we had just announced our acquisition of the L3 Harris security detection automation business, which was another billion. So there you go with 2.65 actually within a month or so. Feeling great. The market liked it. I was on the road when the pandemic really hit. Like everyone else, worried about my family, darted home, and really was only thinking about making sure that that our Dynetics integration was going well, and focused on getting closing for the L3 Harris deal. That's it's an airport. It's dominantly airport security detection. So when you go through the airports these days and you wave your hands in the air, that's our equipment now. 50% chance of it being our equipment. But really focused on getting to closing. I wasn't thinking much more beyond that. And in our case, after you spend $2.65 billion over a 6-week period, you're probably not going to do a whole lot of stuff right away anyway. So I didn't care a lot about the capital markets. Really about getting things done and integrated.
Actually, I was thinking about you all, and you had just signed the lease on your new headquarters building in Reston too, just a couple of weeks before everybody went to remote work. Yeah, no, we literally had just closed on this building. It's a great global headquarters for us in Reston Town Center. It seats over 1,000 people. Again, feeling great about everything, and it's a great building that's very Silicon Valley-esque, as in lots of wide open spaces, lots of big cafeterias, pool tables, all that kind of stuff. And it's starting to be filled up again, but not filled up, just people coming in. But yeah, you're exactly right. It all hit at the same time. Timing getting done, market likes us, moved to a brand new building, and then thud. Yeah. Personally, I like Kirk's headquarters, global headquarters better down where he is. But
We don't have pool tables though.
You got golf courses. Right?
You've got pools.
Yeah, that's right. Swimming pools and movie stars. So let's move on to actually trying to get deals done, right? And so other than in-person management meetings, what was the first thing that you all noticed was different about trying to get a deal done? And what were the hardest things about trying to get deals done during COVID? Let's start with Dave.
I think the one thing, and obviously some of these lessons learned, I think we can adopt into the due course as we go ahead. But we had such intense demands on the leadership team's time in terms of managing the customers, managing the teams, that I think it was just extremely judicious use of the deal team's time and the internal business unit leadership time. I think that was something that I noticed, just a lot of care in terms of just being very strategic in how we went about the prosecution of the deal efforts, from my perspective.
Kirk?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of a deal, after you get through like the table stake stuff, the diligence has to be, confirmed, and you have to get the contract waterfall, the forecast right. It's really about the softer stuff, right? Where you're getting the social interactions with the team, you're getting the opportunity to really get to know people that you're going to be partnering with, and you're going to be backing and living together for the next several years. I think that's been the most challenging part of this pandemic deal making time period, right? Where just you don't get that opportunity to discuss, their personal lives. So then you can have a harder conversation later in the deal about, what's going to happen, sort of post transaction, right? And what does it look like when we're locking arms and going into the next phase of the company's life? I think that's probably been the most difficult. We tried to do it via Zoom, and now we're able to get a little more opportunity to get together. But in the early days, it was definitely tough to have that personal connection and be able to sort of get through tougher times in a deal and lean on sort of that personal relationship. So I think that's probably been the most difficult part of this time period.
Kirk, did you close any deals with no personal face-to-face discussions? I mean, did you have any of those that you had no in-person meetings?
We closed one where we had only one meeting, which is pretty unusual, and all the rest was virtual.
Wow.
So it was that was made in space, which we did, put during. I think we signed the LOI in April, closed with only meeting the team once. So that was, but it definitely has made it harder in that regard to get deals done. But I think we've all gotten used to Zoom and trying to get that personal connection via the squares here, but it's definitely more difficult.
Yeah. How about you, Randy? How was it, and particularly coming out of a large corporation?
I'd say you asked what the first thing was. I think the first thing was getting people to turn their video on when we're on a conference call of some sort, because you're not gonna be in person, so you got to figure that out. So we finally figured out how to work all these different platforms. I think we've dealt with WebEx, Skype, Teams, Blue Jeans, Zoom, Loop Up, like anybody else has on this call. So you just gotta adapt. I will say one thing that's different. You mentioned management meetings. You can have a lot more people in a management meeting these days than you can when you're in person, because we're all scrambling to figure out a conference room size, and that ain't a problem. I remember us having one management meeting where I think we had 40 or 50 people on our side just because we could. I mean, we told everybody, not to speak up too much, but it was just possible. And that way you get real-time information flow. You don't have to worry about, I hear something, so I need to tell it to somebody else and share it. It's just all real time. So that actually was a bit of a positive. Just being able to have more folks in meetings than we normally would, good or bad, but it was good.
That's really interesting. Michael?
Yeah, I think I would kind of bifurcate the environment to kind of the first 3 months and then the next 9 months. The first 3 months was definitely, kind of everybody was hunkered down in their own homes, and so a lot tougher. And so those deals, getting them done, as well as kind of where the financing market was, those were the most challenging. And then I think everybody had kind of, figured out, kind of different tricks of the trade and ways to get stuff done. So I'll speak mostly about the first 3 months and what we had to do then. But what we tried to do was, I agree with Kirk, some of those softer elements are really the toughest thing to get done. Right. Big part of it is just spending the time, at a dinner, having kind of a personal discussion, kind of what motivates, the founder of the business, how does the management team interact with each other? How will they interact with us going forward? And that was really hard to get a sense of. And so one of the things, and I feel comfortable kind of sharing all of our tricks of the trade now that we're a full year into the pandemic. It was sort of been a harder panel to do 9 months ago. But we started to just do kind of the same, I'm sure each of you with your friends have done kind of Zoom happy hours, kind of getting together with friends you haven't seen in kind of 2 decades or whatever it's been, and kind of just getting a chance to reconnect with people. We were doing that with management teams. We had met some of them, once or twice, and that's it. And so we just kind of put it on kind of a regular happy hour, kind of just a chance for people. Everybody would, pour themselves a drink and kind of just, talk about, their family and kind of what motivates them and stuff like that. It was really just helpful. And so, to be honest, I think we got to know some of the management teams better then than we do through a regular ways kind of full auction process where you get, 1 or 2 dinners and then kind of your all the rest are kind of the business sessions. We really felt like we knew, and that was we debated as a partnership early on in terms of your question, Craig. Would we do a deal where we haven't actually had face-to-face meetings? And it was a very split decision across the partnership in terms of whether people were comfortable doing that or not. And kind of, very strongly held positions one way or the other, that our virtual interaction is just the same, or, until you kind of actually are face to face and looking in the whites of someone's eyes, you can't really know kind of how they're going to, react to having a boatload of money in their bank account. You never really can forecast that. That's definitely one of the more arts than science elements of this. But, we then kind of, despite the fact that we don't have the palm trees and the swimming pools, we started in the next 9 months to really take the DC kind of location to our advantage. And so I joke with people, I started making house calls like the doctor in the 1960s, and would meet with founders in their backyard, kind of outside, and kind of socially distanced with masks. But, just, it was a way to be able to kind of have more direct interaction. And I think, that was also really helpful in just getting to know people. And, then, you kind of see their, family come out, and, the family dog and stuff like that. So it was a more personalized kind of set of interactions. So to the point that people had raised before, some of these things were really good. I think the diligence itself, I think, again, I'm old enough to know what diligence was like 20, 25 years ago, when you actually had paper data rooms and you kind of had to go in and view all the files face to face. I think we as an industry have evolved enough that part, doing the due diligence in terms of the actual critical kind of spreadsheets and PowerPoints, that was the easiest part, to be honest, of the transition.
That's great. Now you all just kind of mentioned some of those, some of the things that you did, or you learned, whether it was, going in with all equity or house calls or whatever. You all were phenomenally successful during this period. Did you feel like you had things that were competitive advantages that you all brought to the deal process, and the reason you were able to prevail in so many deal processes over the past year? What did you all do from a firm standpoint or a corporate standpoint that you think others that were involved in those same processes didn't think to do, or didn't step up to do successfully to prevail in your processes? Let's start with Randy.
I think in our case, we kind of joke about it a little bit, but we try to be a kinder, gentler buyer from a strategic perspective. I mean, we just want to get to know people, get to know what they're thinking about, and we still focused on that for sure, even though it's remotely. But I tell you, you get a different feel versus sitting in it. I remember the last management meeting I physically was at Evercore's offices at Park and 53rd in New York on the L3 Harris deal. But since then, we have these other kinds of meetings, and we don't see a whole lot of suits and ties. We see a bunch of folks in hoodies with dogs barking in the background, and sometimes a baby coming in, and it just personalizes it. And I think it matches our style a lot. We're not kind of an in-your-face due diligence firm company as we do it. We're just kinder, gentler. So I really think that helped us a lot, just to personalize things as best we could when we couldn't quite be in person. And I actually found it to be a benefit to some degree.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, no, I don't know that there were things that we were doing in a superior way. I think we've got a really mature sector here and a lot of savvy buyers and operators. I do think, ECS as part of ASGN, the risk is that, hey, we might be a little bit slow, right? We've got a parent company, we've got a deal team that's broken apart, but it's actually, I think our speed was an advantage. We've got this extremely professional parent company from our CEO, CFO, chief legal officer down. Got a great pitch catch with them and kind of unity of vision internally. So I think we were able to move quickly. And as ECS, we're kind of this billion-dollar, small, large in a way. And we were able to paint a picture that was very clear about the management team. We're still growing our leadership team. There's a real clear spot for these acquisitions to fit in and be kind of a big fish in this growing pond. And so I think we were able to, as Michael and Kirk, everyone has said, it's harder to really differentiate yourself in this market generally, but it's hard to make that cultural and courting case over Zoom. But I think we're able to do that in kind of a quick, unified fashion that painted a clear picture of, hey, this is the home for your team and for you, and to really kind of grow within a larger organization. So I think we try to just look at ourselves and try to maximize those attributes.
Yeah, that's great. Michael?
Yeah, I think the reason why you have the four of us up here as panelists is that each of us had done dozens of deals pre-COVID in this industry, and I think it really prevented kind of the casual buyers. It's really hard. And talking to my friends at other private equity firms, if your kind of go-to move is we do a lot of due diligence on a new industry each time, and we're going to kind of get to know the players and kind of figure out what we're going to do there. The COVID environment was a really challenging time, putting aside some of the portfolio challenges that some of those companies had in kind of investing in spaces that they weren't that familiar with and trying to react on the fly to new things that were going to come up in those industries. I think it really, I think it made processes more narrow, and so limited to both financial and strategic who had a lot of experience with M&A. There are a lot of people who have a lot of government contracting experience, just not M&A government contracting experience. There are a lot of people who have M&A experience, but not government contracting experience. And so you really needed to have both, like the four of us kind of came into the pandemic situation with, and I think that enabled a smaller universe of people to be successful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Very, very interesting answer. Kirk, how about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. Like I think what helped us is we didn't really hesitate, right? It was, we love this industry. We love, we're picking what we think are the best companies to go after, right? And then it really, we saw a lot of opportunities that they were under LOI with somebody else, or they were in discussions with other people, that people just sort of got skittish with COVID and said, man, I don't understand the risk here, so I'm going to take a step back. Where we sort of leaned into it, as all of us did on this panel, leaned into it and said, this is the perfect time to show strength, right? And I think that helped us be very successful in the last year, just really presenting ourselves as, we are in this industry for the long term, through ups and downs. And honestly, this was, from a revenue perspective, was not a down, a headwind necessarily, but I think people perceived it could be. And I think that allowed us to really differentiate ourselves against the broader buyer universe. Obviously, the people on this panel we're competing with every day, but I definitely think that was a big differentiator for us.
You had the election overhang, and you also had the potential of seller desire to get deals done and anticipating the potential of a tax change and things like that. So I think you had motivated sellers if you just had the buyers who could step up and be strong like you guys all were. I think that really rings very true. So everybody's got a boss, right? Or everybody's, even managing partners have investors and LPs that they've got to play to. How did either your executive leadership or your shareholders or your LPs, your investors' attitude about doing deals change as you went into COVID? Was there a different mindset, or were they still lean forward, or was there a more risk-averse type of approach to things? Kirk, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, I'd say as a tale, it was two different situations, right? When like commercial aerospace, which is a big part of our business, defense government space, I'll take them both. Commercial aerospace was, when is this ever going to come back, right? Are people ever going to get on the planes again? Now we're starting to see people traveling again. I think deal activity completely shut down in that market. Michael and Arlington were able to do a couple of deals, but generally, the M&A market was pretty much shut down. And I don't think, unless you were getting fantastic deals, it was really hard to convince people like that was the time to step into that market. Now we're starting to see that thaw, and seeing people some equilibrium in terms of what valuations are. So I think that's one piece of it. On the defense government space, I think people were more open to let's find, again, you mentioned some of these risks, election overhang, what are the budgetary constraints because of the COVID relief. But if we can find opportunities, we're investing in areas where we think have a long-term funding tail and priority, then let's go after that. And ultimately, our investors are, and committing to our funds for a reason, right? And that reason is to put that capital to work.
Right.
So if you can find good opportunities in the sectors that are quote unquote resilient to COVID-19, that was a pretty good story. It's also created probably more in this later stages, more entrance into this particular market because there is some scarcity value to these companies that have this COVID resilience and strong revenue tailwinds going forward. So I think we are seeing more competition, specifically in space for assets, but generally, I think that our investors are, where investors expect us to put capital to work. So I think they were pleased with the year that we had.
Yeah, that's great. Randy?
I think from an executive leadership perspective, some of this is generational a bit when it comes to how to prosecute these things. We have some folks like me. I like to meet people in person. I just like to meet people in person, and you get a sense about them and what's happening there. But with some of those folks that we were dealing with post the two larger deals, they were very used to all being remote anyway, largely not in the same town. So I don't think our attitudes really changed a whole lot, other than just having to adapt to the reality of the situation that we were going through. I will say, again, we were it was a little different for us because we had just finished our two large deals. And actually, one of them we had not finished. We had announced the L3 Harris deal beginning of February. We didn't close till May 4th. So when you're acquiring one of the world's largest airport security detection businesses and nobody's on airplanes, it does make you say, wow. But we knew it was an enduring need, and it still is, and it's going great. But it makes you kind of think about things. But we would have slowed down a little bit anyway early on, just after spending that much money.
Have to digest sometime, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And then later in the pandemic, we buy two more things this year. So I think things keep cruising along.
Yeah, great. Dave, how about you guys? And particularly maybe with the assigned executive leadership, right? It's one thing within their markets sectors that they were more familiar in, but this was a new business for them.
Absolutely. I think in general, ASGN we've got a long-term record of buying kind of really strong platforms, rapidly delevering. And, I think so from a capital allocation standpoint, we are a growth company, and that's our DNA, and that's kind of our investors have understood that. I think the leadership team at ASGN didn't really waver. I think we looked at the commercial side of the business and tried to understand where we thought the impacts were going to be, and it's proven out to be pretty much as we expected there. So still engaging. The history of that company is really as a staffing company, and there's still incredible IT staffing business within it. It's growing a really strong IT consulting business also. So still a lot of focus there in growing it. As Kirk mentioned, the ECS segment in our government sector kind of benefits from the imperfect nature of the human species, right? When bad things happen, wars, pandemics, it ends up accruing to the benefit of our companies. And it's a strange aspect of our market, but ECS obviously where we were, whether it's at the Jake or in some of these other customers, benefiting from some of this COVID support. And so I think there was an understanding of ECS as a catalyst for this IT services transformation that ASGN is doing broadly. And so a lot of clarity early on. Hey, we want to keep pushing deals. Let's be an early mover. Let's capitalize and continue the strategy that we're on. So I think we had a good regular rhythm, good kind of unity of communication and vision. And so really professional and supportive leadership team, I think benefited. We wouldn't have been able to do the deals we did without kind of that orchestra working in unison, and it didn't have to be that way. I think it could have been more friction there, but I'm fortunate that we've had that good back and forth.
How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I think like with anything in life, whether it's your personal life or your professional life, communication is the key. And so we were really quick with the communication to our LP base, sharing with them that we intended to be very aggressive during this environment, sharing that we intended to over equitize deals in order to get things done. We kind of went through what our strategy was on every single one of our portfolio companies. Here's how this company is well positioned. Here's how this company is not well positioned, and here's what we're going to do about it. And so I think those early conversations very early on. We had initial dialogue in March, followed it up again with some follow up in April to just tell people how we were seeing the world and what our expectations were. Made it very easy. So there was a lot of appetite. I think people had faith and trust in us to be able to do what we said we would do. And so I think that made the next 10 months a lot easier by communicating early and often with a lot of specificity. Similar to what Kirk described, I think probably hardest in the commercial aerospace world, and we kind of shared that we kind of viewed this as a chance to really separate the wheat from the chaff, and that there would be some companies that wouldn't make it through, and that we wanted to be long-term industry consolidators. We were going to continue to buy assets, and some of the assets that we bought at below book value. And so as things were going to come around, these were going to be plays that we kind of intentionally went into them with more of a kind of 7-8 year hold than a 4 to 6 year kind of typical kind of hold on things. And so we just set expectations on the front end, and I think that always helps with everything. And I think that's the advice I give to all of my portfolio company management teams, is just be very communicative with the board, and we do the same with our LP base.
Yeah, it sounds like you all had great alignment throughout your whole kind of ecosystems of LPs, investors, and partners. That's great. How about interaction with the other participants in the deal process? I see Bob Kipps on there. Were there any bankers who particularly did a particularly good job of kind of evolving with the changing times and changed their practices about how they brought deals to market, to the degree that you were looking at processes? And then I'm going to give you a chance to throw lenders and lawyers under the bus as well.
I think from my perspective, Craig, I think the bankers did a great job. We made folks like Bob Kip's staff.
You made Kip's drink by asking that question. I'm not sure what he's drinking, but he took a big swig of something.
No, but the whole logistics of, okay, how many people, which conference room, who's flying where, for stuff that's out, all that kind of stuff, you don't have to worry about so much. So Kip's life got easier, and gets more margin out of the deal by not having to deal with it. But I really think that the external advisors just adapted like we did and did a fine job. I really do.
Let's, instead of everybody answering every one of those, how about anybody want to take since the lending environment was so challenging there at the beginning, did you have any experiences with lenders who figured out how to get creative and come back and help provide some leverage around some of these deals? Kirk, how about Kirk or Michael? You guys answer that.
Sure, I'll start. We did. I think in the situations where we did offer the full equity backstop, we actually didn't need to use all equity in those deals. I think we were able to leverage. Definitely took a lot more hand-holding and virtual hand-holding and a lot more calls and Zooms to get people comfortable. And so certainly lower levels of leverage than what we would have experienced 6 months earlier. Certainly the rates that we paid were not as borrower friendly. But ultimately, in the end, we were able to get all these transactions financed with a healthy amount of debt, and kind of were able to leverage long-term relationships and kind of rely on our track record in working with them, and kind of having them never lose money in our deals. When we kind of really tried to push people to get comfortable to be our partners, and a number of them are on the Zoom as well that stood by our sides.
Yeah. Anybody want to take a shot at the lawyers? I see Dean and Joe Schmelter on there. We can. How'd the lawyers evolve with this process? Dave, you want to take a crack?
No, I think similar to Randy's comment about the bankers, I think the lawyers adjusted well. Also, I think very, the plates were full clearly, but very responsive and trying. We were a bit flying a plane as we were fixing it as we were flying it to some degree with. Some of ours were kind of some strategic tuck-ins here. And so with the CARES Act and PPP loans and some of these things, I was pretty impressed by, kind of the agility of the legal support we had.
Did you have to use more, because there were some more unknowns? Any of you all can answer this more. Did you see more prominence of, use of reps and warranties insurance or other kinds of kind of belt and suspenders types of things to paper over potential risks that you might not have otherwise previously done? Kirk, you want to?
Yeah, I was going to make the comment on Dave that our Zoom rates were a little bit higher than our phone rates for the lawyers, but no, it was. I would look. I think we've been using rep and warranty insurance for a long time. On almost every transaction. I think there were carve-outs introduced as related to COVID risks that were not unexpected. So we did see that. But generally, the market, maybe with a brief pause in terms of deal activity, really turned back on, right? Rep and warranty insurers still stepped up to deals. We saw significant activity in that market. We didn't see rates really change in terms of the cost and premium. So I think we're, again, I didn't see a lot of difference sort of pre and post pandemic or pre or during pandemic on the rep and warranty front, or other than like the carve outs that you might expect.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, I'm going to ask each of you, of all the deals you were able to get done, is there one that sticks out in particular as having been more challenging because of COVID-related factors? Tell us a story about that deal and why you're proud of having been able to get it done. So let's start with Michael.
Sure. Let me give a quick one on the lawyer front, just to share there. I do think one of the challenges, I think lawyers actually had a really good year. One of the challenges as a buyer of legal services was that, for the four of us who were all active in the marketplace, there were a lot of people in the early days that weren't as active. So we had more due diligence done by some of the specialists on deals, because I think it was all they had to do. It was either to kind of, sit in bed and kind of watch the number of COVID cases increase, or spend time in our data rooms. And so we did have to kind of monitor kind of as we started getting invoices, just to figure out why are they as high as they are. And I think really it was people were bored and didn't have much to do, and so they really surfed the data room. But no, I think the deal that I would probably say was the most challenging was just J&J Worldwide. Was a deal that we got done in that first kind of 90-day period of the pandemic. We were fortunate to have visited the management team down in Austin. It was my last trip at the end of February, early March. It was definitely one of those trips where I was uncomfortable, on the plane, saying like, should I be doing this? I remember being in the management presentation and kind of asking them, what they thought would be the impact of COVID on the business. They do aseptic cleaning in hospitals, at government hospital sites and the like, and so we saw this kind of similar to what Randy described with some of the post September 11th security spend, where 2 decades later you're still seeing that kind of same spend. We saw that same opportunity with aseptic cleaning and what we're doing with J&J. So we really wanted to do the deal pre-pandemic. in the midst of the pandemic, we were even more interested in trying to figure out a way to get something done. We were neck and neck with a strategic the whole time, and so we were willing to do our equity backstop and try to differentiate ourselves. We did kind of have those happy hours that I described over Zoom. It really was a chance for us to get to really bond with the management team, for them to get to know us as people, for us to get to know them. And so, it was definitely there was the transaction in that first 90-day period where we were kind of figuring out a lot of the tricks of the trade. And then once we were able to kind of get that success in terms of getting the lenders to be there in the end of the day, getting our investment committee comfortable, getting kind of that good relationship with that management team going, we're able to kind of take the lessons learned coming out of that experience and kind of execute it multiple times over the course of the next 9 months. That's
great. Dave?
Yeah, I think I would say the deal I'm most proud of, I think, is ISM, which is ServiceNow elite partner that we acquired toward the end of the year. And this was I think, a really strategic deal for us. Kind of the company's at an inflection point, mix of commercial and federal customers. And I think, just given the nature of some of these ServiceNow engagements, higher degree of kind of project related, kind of smaller deal sizes in some respects, so I had to understand within ECS, aggressively building out our own ServiceNow practice, seeing a huge kind of revenue synergy potential across ASGN. We had to keep our eyes on that kind of strategic forest, but understanding the kind of tactical trees of understanding where these projections are going to be. I think that was an interesting balance there. We also had an owner group that some of whom were going to lead the business and stay with us, some were not, and various different views on key issues. So we had a lot of back channeling, a lot of communication there, and just kind of constant contact, kind of working these various issues as we went about kind of snatching that company. Also had it's not a huge business. There was a PPP loan element that was, legislation wasn't written all that clearly. And so we actually had a very interesting kind of dynamic with another element of the CARES Act that ASGN was involved in versus the PPP loan. And so we had kind of a mid-deal, issue that came up that we worked through. And so there's just a lot of different factors there and kind of bringing that home, really bringing this kind of great elite ServiceNow capability in-house. I think we're proud of that. And I think that should be really helpful to us going forward.
That's great. Kirk, man, how do you pick amongst all your
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the most interesting one was UAV Factory, and that it was based in Latvia, and getting on site there, our team on site there was fairly interesting, right? So that we had to quarantine for a few days, and then quarantine once you got there, take a test, and then you were released to go free to into Riga. So that was definitely challenging to do an international deal, especially in Latvia during COVID. But I think we're proud of all the transactions, and I see some of the people we partner with on this phone, so I don't want to pick a favorite, but we're proud of the year we had, but that deal particularly was challenging to get done in COVID.
That's great, Randy. And how about you, Randy?
No really fun deal stories during the pandemic, particularly. But I will say, we did get 4 deals done. We've closed 3 since January of last year, and we'll close our 4th, Gibbs and Cox, here in about 10 days, I think. And it's hard to figure out which one of those are my favorite, quite frankly. It's like ask you which of your children are your favorite. But some of these just blow me away.
Don't worry, Randy, your kids aren't on the line.
They are not on the line. They don't live in the same building with me right now. They're adults. Seriously. No, but some of this stuff, Dynetics blows me away. We bought this very special company, an ESOP like our heritage ESOP from SAIC, and we haven't lost a single person from that management team. And you think about folks that have been around a long time, who have a lot of equity and can do a lot with the money that they're going to. We haven't lost anybody. So that culturally has been great. And with Dynetics, knock on wood, we may be selected as someone to put the first woman on the moon. And that's a pretty cool thing. Stressful, but that's pretty great. But the other ones, 1901 group, well, Dynetics, or the L3 Harris thing I talked about earlier, that's just going to be an enduring capability. And it's great. It's going to be even greater. And it matched up well with what we already had. We had a capability called Rapiscan for baggage and under the floor baggage. And this one just matched up well there with us. So that reverse integration has been great. 1901 group, great digital transformation manages services capability that we're going to be able to leverage across the entire corporation. And a great management team and folks that just like doing what they do. And then Gibbs and Cox, again, another reverse integration that we're going to do, because we're going to take our maritime business and put it inside of the Gibbs and Cox wrapper. And that will be our maritime marine architectural design, engineering, sustainment business. And they're all just great. So we've had a fun lot of hours, 15 months. None are favorites and all are really super unique.
That's awesome. I'm going to go to a question from the chat from Joe Schmelter, and it dovetails into really the question I was going to use as kind of the get off the stage question here. But you know, among all the changes in style and process that deal makers were forced to institute over the last year, what do you think are the ones that are likely to take hold permanently? You know, how will the deal making landscape have changed permanently, and is that a good thing? Let's start. Let's start with Kirk.
I do think there will be more interactions that will stay virtual, right? I think we did a lot of in-person accounting diligence, in-person, you know, pick an area diligence that at the end of the day, I think it's more efficient to do it virtually, right? They're just, from a scheduling perspective, getting people on planes. I know it hurts my commercial aero enterprise a little bit, but I think the pace that we've been able to execute on diligence has accelerated because of the move to virtual and move to platforms like this. And I don't expect that to change much, you know, when we come out of this.
Great. Michael?
Yeah, I agree with Kirk there. I think there is a lot more diligence that will always be done remotely, and you know, I think that is a good thing. You know, I think some things that I talked about before are things we want to try to continue to incorporate. Just more kind of non-deal related interactions with folks, whether it's, you know, showing up at people's house, or whether it's you know, unannounced.
Show up unannounced with a bottle of wine. Yeah.
Exactly. I do that just for the CEOs of my businesses.
Yeah.
No, I think, you know, just you know, having it be a more kind of personalized experience is certainly something that we're thoughtful about. You know, those Zoom happy hours and trying to figure out ways to kind of just continue that, recreate that. I think you know, so much of the business is you know, not the art of the deal itself, but it's really kind of the partnership and the relationship that happens afterwards. And we didn't get enough time you know, to talk about it, but I think what was a lot harder is kind of integration in the midst of a pandemic. And so that's certainly something that we spent a lot of time with. And, you know, it's always harder to do because, you know, a lot of the good things that happen through integration are the not kind of staged all hands meeting, but kind of the talk around the water cooler and kind of, you know, oh, share with me what you guys are doing for that program. Oh, we're doing something similar over here. And some of those kind of natural things that happen that just, you know, would be the kind of, it's really just tough to do because they're kind of forced interactions in a Zoom environment where you have to schedule it with people and kind of all kind of get onto the same platform. And so, you know, we really, again, to the communication side of things, we're really focusing on over communicating and make sure we get that aspect of it right. But I think, you know, the emphasis on making sure that everybody is kind of, you know, singing off the same sheet of music is certainly something that from both a deal making and integration perspective are things that will last.
Yeah, that's great. David, how about you?
Yeah, I think great points already made. I think back to post 9/11 when we set out, a lot of people said everything's going to go to video conferences. I still think, to Kirk's point, there will be a continuum of a lot more virtual work being done. But at the end of the day, this is really, it's a marriage. It's about trust. And, I think the in-person interaction as social, animals that we are, I think is going to still be really critical. We've looked at our CFO, Pamela Rothka, has helped lead kind of a look at our integration process, making sure we're kind of right sizing all the pieces of that. I think we're pushing the kind of technology and systems work a little bit more to the fore. Obviously, that was always important, but making sure at the front end that we're identifying any key issues right at the beginning. I think that's another element. No, but I think, Michael's point about communicating some more, I think extremely critical, right? It's hard to differentiate yourself. It's hard to inculcate a culture in the process of the deal. And then just the risk of leakage and talent drain post-deal remain high, especially in this environment when people are kind of feeling disconnected from work, from working from their homes and being remote. So I think there's a lot of focus on that softer side once you get kind of the quantitative pieces done.
Yeah, that's great. And Randy, how about you?
Completely agree with Michael, Kirk, and Dave. You still need to have that personal touch, but we're able to do a lot more remotely these days, and I think we all know that in the rest of our business world. We don't have to waste time traveling to get someplace. We don't have to think about limitations now. It's all virtual. As long as you have a team that's committed and dedicated, and you trust, and you have the right technology in place to be able to do it. Here we are having Zoom, a Zoom meeting with a whole lot of folks at ACG, and it's great. So I think like anything else, the world's going to change to much more virtual, but you got to hang on to that one part of it, which is just sitting down and breaking bread from time to time.
That's great. Two other really quick questions from the audience from Wint Palmer. Is there anything about the COVID situation which has tended to favor one type of buyer, financial versus strategic, over the other? We'll just take first hand up can answer.
This is Dave. I don't think so. I just think, there's a lot of smart buyers out there. There's a lot of capital. I think, there's a lot of kind of clear strategies that can add a lot of value in this market. I just see it. I don't necessarily see a big difference. Michael, I don't know if you got a different.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate from before. I think it favors experience, and you can have experienced strategics or experienced financials, and you can have inexperienced strategics and inexperienced financials. So I think it's definitely a premium on having done this and been around the block.
But I think the points that both you and Kirk made earlier about the ability and the willingness to lean forward and fully equitize a deal and then go figure out how to finance it on the back end made you guys very sophisticated, sponsor buyers, and helped give you a leg up in the process. One more question, and again, we'll do a speed round. Just raise your hand if you've got an answer. Have you noticed, and this is from Ingrid Braun, have you noticed an increased reliance on vendor due diligence as a result of COVID and not being able to travel as easily? Are you guys using the third-party vendor diligence firms more or less pre-COVID?
From our side, we haven't. Nothing's changed. We still use the same folks we used before. I don't think that's going to change dramatically. I mean, Dave, Kirk, and Michael may have a different perspective, but not really for us.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no difference.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great.
I don't know if it's a kind of a European term in terms of the seller-based due diligence. I think those exist just as much. Our viewpoint on that is helpful, but we still always will rely on our own kind of buy-side advisor, even if there's kind of a fully, no matter how much information we get from the seller, we want to verify it ourselves. So it can speed up our process, and it doesn't take the place of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're at the top of the hour. I can't thank you guys enough for agreeing to do this. I thought you all did a great job. It was a great level of engagement. We kept things moving, and so really appreciate it. It dawned on me as I was looking across, your deal activity and just your experience in this, that we might have just gone ahead and called this the finalist group for the ACG Deal Makers of the Year this year, and we can quit the whole process of preparing for all that. You guys all were just real rock stars this year and did a great job on the panel. So thanks a lot for turning out today, and hope everybody enjoyed the panel.